Had to do a little extra tonight. Y'all are rowdy. Good evening. Welcome to this December 9th meeting of the Ascension Parish Council here in our beautiful new facility. We welcome everyone who is here as our guest, and we appreciate you being here. I'm glad to see all of our councilmen tonight. Mr. Ogeron is unable to attend. He has an appointment in his office, and I have not seen Travis yet, but I would expect that his newest pocket handkerchief will show up shortly. We all wait up here to see which one Travis is going to have on. Thank you all so much again for being here. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'll ask Coach Thomas if he would please lead us in the invocation, followed by the pledge.
Let's bow our heads, please. Most Heavenly Father, as we come, Lord, to the end of the day and a close of the year, we pray, Lord, that you continue to bless us, bless this parish of Ascension, and bless each and every person under the sound of my voice. Oh, Father, we thank you, Lord, for allowing us to make it at this hour. I pray, Lord, for this council. I pray for everyone that's under the sound of my voice. I pray, Lord, that as we leave this place tonight, that you allow each of us to get home safe and sound. Father, I wish everyone here tonight and their families a merry and a prosperous Christmas. In your name we pray, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. We all say it, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go much further, I do want to take a moment to mention that Ms. Gwen LeBlanc, our former CFO of many years, lost her husband this past week. And so if all of you will remember Ms. Gwen and her family, Mr. LeBlanc, excuse me, he was lost to us over the past weekend. So thank you all for keeping her and her family in your prayers. There are no chairs additions. We do have a public comment period tonight. If you have an item on this agenda that you would like to make a comment on, please get one of those red or green cards over there. Fill that out, hand it to the secretary. She will get it up here to Travis if he arrives, or to me if he doesn't. And at the appropriate time, you'll be called upon to make your comment. Item number 5 is the parish president's report. I'm going to ask that you indulge me and allow me to move the parish president's report. Christelle Slaughter with SSA is going to be here to do a presentation during that time period, and she has notified those of us who needed to know that she is stuck in traffic on the way from New Orleans. She has an estimated arrival time of about 6:35, so we will get to her and put the parish president's report in that spot where once she arrives. So I appreciate that indulgence. Item number 6, the consent agenda. Madam Secretary.
Approval of change order number 2 for an additional amount of $29,443.50 and 50 calendar days for the Ascension Gym Lincoln Builders. The total contract amount on the agenda is incorrect, and it needs to be corrected to $3,039,430.50. Approval of the naming of the connector road between Ashland Road to South St. Landry Road as Lawrence Minor Road. Adoption of November 4th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes. Adoption of November 18th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes. And adoption of special council meeting minutes, November 23rd, 2021.
Does anyone have any item they'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Chair would entertain a motion. A motion by Mr. Mason, second by Mr. Cagnolati to approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Moving along to general business. Item A, approval of the lowest responsive bid for the Ascension Parish Jail plumbing upgrades, Phase 1, Donaldsonville, ANR Construction. Cynthia LeBlanc. Miss Cynthia, good evening.
How you doing?
Doing great, thank you.
On October 26, 2021, the Purchasing Department received one bid for the AP Jail Plumbing Upgrade Phase 1, Donaldsonville, Louisiana. After review, the Maintenance Department and the Parish Project Manager, Dean Thompson, recommends accepting the lowest responsive bid submitted by A&R Construction.
Have a motion by Mr. Thomas, a second by Mr. Mason. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Item B, approval of an RFQ for strategic planning services to develop an early childhood development program. Resourceful Consulting. Ms. Cynthia.
Good evening.
Good evening.
After review, Joan Diaz recommends accepting the highest responsive proposal submitted by Resourceful Consulting, also to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this service.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Mason, a second by Coach Thomas, and a question by Mr. Cagnolotti. Didn't you say you had a question, John? Okay, I'm sorry. Did I hear somebody say they had a question? Okay. Gosh, I'm hearing things. So did you say that was the highest bid? I want to clarify that.
That's the highest responsive proposal.
Okay. Were there lower responsive proposals? It was the highest ranking,
It
not
was,
the
yes,
highest.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
gotcha. I was going to say, I don't think we're
I'm
supposed to
sorry.
take the highest proposal.
No, ma'am, I'm sorry.
No
The highest
problem.
ranking.
No
Yes, ma'am.
problem. Highest ranking. John, do you want to make some mention of this?
No, I would like to thank Representative Kim Brass and Senator Ed Price. They got us $80,000 out of the capital outlay budget to pay for this, so.
Fantastic. Thank them both on our behalf. Yes, Mr. Thomas?
I'd like to just follow up on what John just said, to
Good.
really appreciate Mr. Bryce and Mr. Ed Price also in getting those 80,000.
Very good. So are there any objections to this proposal? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item C, approval of a request for proposal for aerial spraying, Vector Disease Control International. Ms. Cynthia.
After review, Sean Severio recommends accepting the lowest ranking proposal submitted by Vector Disease Control International, also to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement and contract for this service.
Have a motion by Mr. Thomas, a second by Mr. Lambert. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item D, approval of an RFQ for HMGP 4263 DRLA number 20, Ascension Parish 5% Initiative Generator Project, ADG Baton Rouge. Ms. Cynthia.
After review, Ken Dawson recommends accepting the lowest responsive proposal submitted by ADG Baton Rouge LLC, also to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this service.
Motion by Mr. Thomas, a second by Mr. Cagnolotti. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Item E, approval of a cooperative endeavor agreement between Ascension Parish government and the Ascension Parish Sheriff to facilitate the installation of a generator at the Ascension Parish Courthouse Annex. Have a motion by Mr. Robert, a second by Mr. Cagnolotti. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item F, approval of a cooperative endeavor agreement between Ascension Parish government and the Ascension Parish Sheriff to facilitate the establishment of an early childhood development center. Have a motion by Mr. Robert, a second by Coach Thomas. Are there any questions with regard? Hearing none, are there any objections? That motion passes. Item G, a resolution to appoint Jerome Fournier as the Parish Administrative Hearing Officer to review and approve the renovation plan for blighted property located at 50. Have a motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Cagnolotti. We'll hold that vote. I want Mr. Fournier to kind of tell us where we are here, and I think he's going to introduce Mr. Cuiser to do so as well.
Yes,
Mr.
thank you,
Fournier.
Madam Chair, members of the council. This allows us to approve a renovation plan for a piece of blighted property in the city of Donaldsonville. City of Donaldsonville has already approved this on their end. We're going to approve it on the parish side. we're going to basically relinquish all the delinquent taxes that are on the roll, which aren't many. They're very, very few. And we're going to allow Mr. Quizair to redevelop the property. This is a very common practice in other jurisdictions that I've seen across the country, where we're trying to get blighted property back into the fold here, so we can collect taxes later on, all right? And I'd like to introduce Mr. Quizair, who's going to be doing the project, all right?
The Honorable Mr. Quizair, welcome to the new chambers.
Thank you all so much, Madam Chair, Councilmen, Administrators, Executives. It's a pleasure to be here. And first and foremost, this is my first time coming into this building, and what a beautiful edifice this is. Let me commend, congratulate, salute you all. This is certainly a value-added asset, and it should carry us into the future as a very progressive parish. As Mr. Fournier said, we are attempting to dot the I's, cross the T's, and bring further clarification to a blighted property subject matter. There in Donaldsonville, 507 Opelousas Street, which is the next block from where I live. It's a property that's been sitting there for quite a few years. Most of the heirs of that property are in California, one here in Ascension Parish. They want to just get it cleaned up. So they asked me to do this on their behalf, and hopefully, wishfully, prayerfully, it can be under my name one day. But the city of Donaldsonville has already issued a demolition permit. Attorney Sid Marchand is orchestrating all of the due diligence steps in the process to make sure that we have full clarity on this as we move forward. I want to thank Mr. Fournier for accepting to be the administrator on the behalf of the parish of Ascension, so we would have both parallels clear and move forward. Hopefully, wishfully, prayerfully, one day, once we get the property cleared of all the trees that Ida blew down and that old structure that's dilapidated to the point of embarrassment, hopefully we can one day probably put a cottage, a bungalow, a shotgun house on there, and like he said, turn it back into the local economy as far as, the tax base, for sure. So with your embracing of the concept, certainly we would need your permission and authorization for this step to move forward. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. It's great to see you, Roy.
Great to see you all. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Robey.
Sure.
Whenever you say that the property eventually in your name, and the people who are in Ascension Parish currently, you're representing them, just tell me a little bit more about that, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I think it's a great idea, especially if they seek you out, and I know all you've done for our community.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure, but I think the people would like to hear too.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It's the George Thompson estate, and he and his wife passed on many years ago. Their heirs, they have 3 of them left in California, one here in Ascension Parish. They asked me to orchestrate this process because at some point in time, a succession will take place, and hopefully, wishfully, I can engage in getting it registered in my name.
Yeah, absolutely. A private deal with them. Yeah, just making sure that's a deal between you and.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
It's all.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing. That's the way that it's going to turn our city around, taking these old dilapidated structures.
Correct.
And, I just wanted to make sure that was clear for everyone out there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Motion and second exist. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Roy. Great to see you. Item H, approval of change order number 7 in the amount of $131,122.34 and 225 calendar days, Ascension Parish Sewer Program Improvements, Evans Graves Engineers. Total amount is $4,973,569.66. Gavin? Thank you.
Evening, how are y'all?
Very good, sir. How are you?
Good. So this change order is for a project we've had on the books, unfortunately, for a long time. It started right before really COVID happened. Since the project's gone on so long, we've had interferes with not only COVID, but every time the water goes up, there's certain sections of the project we can't work on. We've ran into delays with getting materials, some unforeseen conditions when we were installing some of the wet wells and clear wells. They started settling funny, which was not anticipated. We are currently contracting a soil company to investigate, to shore up the areas. We've already had to do it on one section, but on a couple other areas that we have to shore up, we didn't have soil testing done at that point for those locations, and in order to ensure that they don't sink, we have to get those results in before we can go ahead and proceed with that part of the project.
I have a motion by Mr. Thomas. Second by, who had that? I don't want them winking over there at each other. Michael Mason. Every time I assign the motion to the wrong person, because I can't hear which one of them did it, they wink at each other over there like, we got her again. So, motion and a second. Are there any questions? Hearing.
Discussion?
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Malonson.
Yeah, so this is, I know Travis isn't here yet, but this is a topic that he's dealt with, frustrations with the project for his constituents over there. I didn't know if, so I don't know exactly what it is that Mr. Turner wanted to address, but I know he was anxious to have this contractor here to speak. I know his phone's been burning up the last few months with issues on construction and Dara and whatnot, and so even though he's not here, I was hoping we could address that.
We do have the contractors here, and as well as the engineer. I know part of his concern was the fact that, due to the fact that in order for us to be able to overlay the roads that were out there, we have to have the project substantially complete. We don't want to start a section of the road to, certify that section is done, and then have it take another 6-8 months, a year until, then the warranty runs out for that section of road before the project actually finishes. So some of the delays have come with the fact that, that road was done, and right now we ran into complications on Marshon School Road, some of the other, I forget the other roads. But, yeah. So we're working tirelessly to try to get it done. I think they're down to their last bit of sections of piping that's in ground, so we're hoping that that's going to be resolved. The contractor has addressed some of those issues with going back and refinishing sections of the road to make sure it's more drivable and not as rutted up and dangerous for the constituents.
Gotcha. I do know one other small issue he was having. So, like, whenever we're working on the smaller side roads, some of these roads aren't 20, 22 feet wide.
Yes.
If we can just be conscientious of where our construction equipment is to the homeowners, egress in and out of their roads. I know that was a topic he was getting a lot of complaints about.
Okay. So. Yeah, we did address that at the beginning of the project, and it's been reiterated a couple of times. As soon as we can't let them pass all the time, but we try to limit their amount of time where they're stopped, because as soon as they make the road where it's safer for them to pass, the equipment will move out and allow the people to pass.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank you, Gavin.
No problem.
Thank you, Gavin. If Travis is coming, from what he tells me, if he has questions, we will go back to this item if you all are, if they'll just hang
come
out.
on.
Look, come on, it's the first, it's not that late.
All right, yes.
And it's raining outside, you don't want to go out
We're
anyway.
good. We're good. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Are there, Mr. Lambert?
Yeah, but, in the rain days, and help explain I know with the Mississippi River, you're not able to dig certain footages away. How many of these days are counted for that?
For the river being high?
Yeah.
I don't think in this section we didn't have any high, some of the other changers that had been submitted had included high water levels from the Mississippi within those change orders. This one, it includes 59 days for rain days. I 31 days for rain days, COVID, 9 days, forest main exploration, additional sheet piling, 18 days. Yeah. So that's everything that compiles this 166 days.
And how many roads do we need, needs to be overlaid?
How many of those? 4 roads that need to be overlaid. And that's going to be completed by our transportation, our road group for Ascension Parish.
Okay.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Now, I'm going to have to go back and remember, did I have a motion and a second? And okay. We have a motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Item I, renewal of a contract for professional services, grounds maintenance, Royal Estates Lawn and Landscaping LLC, not to exceed $164,911.89. Mr. Compton, I see your name attached to that.
I'd like to make a motion, but I would like to hear from Mr.
I figured we'd hear from him, and then we'll get you some motions.
Okay, so thank you. This is a continuation of the contract that this body approved this past year, and we have been satisfied with the services we have received. We asked for a new round of quotes for the projects that are being part of this contract, and the price is going up a little bit, and that is because of fuel costs. So for the Royal Estates, it's basically going up $144.83 per cut. That's the total per cut.
I guess when the price of gas goes down, they're going to reduce their contract? Probably not. Coach?
Yeah. How much more was it? How much more was it? How much more did it go up?
This particular contract is $144.83 per cut. I don't have that total because we didn't start at the beginning of the year.
All right.
This started midway through the year.
And this,
per cycle?
Yes, sir. There's 36 cycles, and it's $144.83 per cycle.
and it's strictly grass cutting, huh?
Excuse me?
Strictly grass cutting.
Yes, sir.
So we have a motion by Mr. Melanson, a second by Coach Thomas. Are there any other questions? Mr. Cagnolati.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Is this an annual, will this carry us for another year, or is this just getting us, how much will this cover?
This is for the entirety of 2022.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. All right. Are there any other questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Patrick, would you please communicate with Christelle? I'm having a hard time. I tried to answer her that she's going to be about 7 o'clock or so, and I haven't been able to respond to her. Would you let her know that as long as we have not adjourned, she'll be able to do her thing? If we've had to adjourn, then we will just have to reschedule.
Will do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Item J, renewal of a master contract for professional services, grounds maintenance, H&O grounds, not to exceed $125,824. Have a motion by, who was that? Mr. Robert, and a second by Mr. Mason. Are there any questions? Mr. Ricky, do you want to tell us anything about this?
So this one is a little bit different contractor, different locations. We are seeing a moderate price increase at one particular location. I guess they realized it was a little bigger than they had originally estimated, and a significant price change here at the Annex. So this contract is now for the full year. Last year it was basically around 6 months, but the price that we're paying for this entire complex is going down $2,150 per cut. So it's a significant improvement.
Wow. They do go down. When you build a great big building on part. All right. We have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item K, approval of a cooperative endeavor agreement between Ascension Parish Government and Ascension Economic Development Corporation, procurement of professional services necessary to have legislation drafted in time. I have a motion and a second by Mr. Thomas and Mr. Robert, but I'd like to call on the AEDC folks to please come up and let's talk a little bit about what this is, because we have some councilmen who have not seen this kind of item before, and so they need to hear your talking points. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Kate sends her apologies. She's flying back from a meeting tonight. So I just wanted to kind of go over what we're doing with this cooperative endeavor agreement tonight. AEDC has been involved in the formation of the Riverplex Megapark since 2014. And you may remember that as the West Bank Industrial Overlay that we just renewed earlier this year. Since 2014, we've hosted and attended well over 40 meetings with landowners, prospects, planning and zoning officials, site selection department at LED, developers, and others since that time. Taylor Gravois and CSRS have been with us every step of the way in this process. We have come very close to landing large projects in the past, but the main reason the site hasn't been chosen was related to infrastructure, railroad, dock, and road access, subpar, and it's not out there, basically. The Economic Development District related to the CEA we're supporting tonight would allow us to use revenues generated within the district to fund infrastructure to continue to grow businesses within the Riverplex Megapark. Taylor is here tonight to answer any questions you may have regarding the formation of that district and what it means for us.
Thank you very much. Taylor, are you prepared to visit with us a minute? I'm confident you are.
Good evening, and thank you. And I agreed to do this, but I told Lisa I would never be able to do as good a job as Kate. So I just warned her on that. So anyway, most of you may be familiar with this project. We've been working on it for quite a while, and we have had lots of opportunities with projects on the West Bank. And there's some substantial challenges with infrastructure, being it's largely still rural. So we have to find a way to address those challenges and attract new business there. And this economic development district is the way to do it. And it's a way to do it where it doesn't affect the parish's existing finances, because what the EDD does is it captures only the new tax increment that's going to be created when a project does invest. So it's important to know that no new taxes will be created with this district, but it's a capture mechanism to capture those tax increments and prioritize it for projects on the West Bank. There are at least 3 existing tax increments districts I can think of in Ascension, one associated with Tanger, Cabela's, and I think Conway Plantation. So it is a very common tool to use to finance projects, and I think aside from Ascension, there's 46 total across the state. So this is a mechanism to finance the infrastructure that's needed to attract new business to Ascension Parish and keep the economy growing.
Gentlemen, any questions? I'm going to take you in order. Mr. Cagnolati.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one question on the amount. Is that a not to exceed amount, Lisa?
As far as I'm aware, yes, sir.
Okay. In other words, if we don't spend that much, we won't, but that's what you feel you need. Okay.
Mr. Wagasback.
Yeah, so this is new to me, so I may ask a stupid question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is this similar to, this money is an investment and you guys trying to go get us funding for these infrastructure projects? Would that be fair to say?
That is correct. The EDD district is it's statewide legislation, and there's 2 ways you can enact it, one at the state level and one at the local level. But you have to have that taxing district in place in order to capture that revenue. So the revenue is going to come from the sales and use taxes when you have a multi-billion-dollar investment with some of these petrochemical companies.
So the district does exist today, though, right?
The district does not exist.
Does not exist.
Does not
Okay.
exist.
We're trying to create.
I heard you say something since 2015, but you were just talking about y'all been working on it since
That's the
2015.
Riverplex Mega Park in its entirety of 17,000 acres.
Okay.
Yeah. So the intention, if you guys are familiar with the overlay, the intention is to put the taxing district along the same boundaries as the industrial overlay district, so they coincide. And the overlay district, I think, was created in 2015.
Okay. So this, the funding is to do the things necessary to overlay it and capture these funds once a facility would be built here.
Further the development of that West Bank overlay district.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Right. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I just want to thank you all and thank Mr. President, Mr. Diaz, and all of those that are involved in moving things forward on the West Bank and a lot of other projects that's going on. I think we're on the right track in getting this done, and it's very exciting to know that we'll be having some movement on the west side. So I'm very grateful and very thankful that this is going on. So thank you all, Mr. Diaz, and Mr. President. He's not here, but I'm really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and it's definitely a step in the right direction to move the West Bank and Ascension Parish forward.
Okay, are there any further questions? Mr. Robear. Oh, yeah, Mr. Robear, then Mr. Lawler.
I wanted to tell y'all, thank you, congratulations. This is the types of things that we do need, not only on the West Bank, but also on the East Bank. Also, I wanted to clarify for myself that is this going to be set kind of like Cabela's in the sense that any tax, are they putting aside a certain percentage of the tax revenue taken in there to build the infrastructure themselves? So we're not actually putting up the bill for the roads and infrastructure. They're just able to take some of the tax revenue created from their business to reimburse themselves for that, correct?
That is correct, but if you so chose, Ascension could take that on as an undertaking, or it can be used as a repayment mechanism.
And I have no issue with that, but in that scenario, or in that case, Ascension would be reimbursed with that tax revenue from that particular economic district?
That is correct.
Well, I think it's projects like this that we need.
Yeah.
It's projects like this that we can attract not only your plants and your industrial, but also your commercial and your residential. You know, something that could get us a project on the West Bank, very similar to Conway Plantation or to Heritage, you know, where they do a full experience. You have residential, you have restaurants, you have school districts, you have it all. So congratulations, keep up the good work. And also to you, Mr. Dawson back there, congratulations. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Mr. Lawler.
Thank you. Two questions. We already have an overlay district, correct?
That's correct.
And does that have the legal descriptions already with it?
I think the way we created
boundaries?
this, I think the way we created this, and I may have to defer to Ricky because he was here back in 2015. Instead of developing legal descriptions, we went the zoning amendment route and amended the zoning map of the parish. And when that ordinance was put in place, the overlay district became a map amendment to the zoning map of the parish.
Gotcha.
If I remember correctly.
That is correct.
Okay, cool. And this is really off base, not really for you to answer. Do we still have a lobbyist? No.
We still have a lobby.
No, I mean, do we still have a lobbyist that, it's not for you to answer, for the parish?
Yes, we do.
Who is that?
It's Ty Bromell.
Okay, because I just see that we're basically getting another lobbyist for this. And it just like,
Where do you see that?
political support, shepherding it through the legislative process. That's what lobbyists do. But I'm just curious as to where I haven't heard anything in 2 years from them, so I'm just curious. That's all.
The price breakdown I have is money going to CSRS for the property boundaries, an attorney to actually draft up the legislation and help us do all the legalities. This is a very complicated process, and then Lauren Scott to do the economic analysis and tell us what it's going to actually pay. So if it needs to be shepherded through the legislature, that does fall under Ty Bromell's duties.
Okay, well, according to what was submitted to us, it says 30,000 of CSRS, and it says for political support, and it also says 40,000 of Jordan Mansour to shepherd bill through the legislative process. That's what I was asking. So I don't want to pay double for something we already have.
I agree with you.
I was just wondering.
We won't.
Yeah, do we need to amend to
Well, you-
remove that from the package, the paying, since we already do have a lobbyist who should take that responsibility?
I mean, I think since it's not to exceed, we should be able to look at the billing, just make sure we're not being billed double for it, and
So it's a great question, Aaron. I'll answer it by saying this. When the bill is introduced, it's going to have to go to the committee, and there's also going to have Lauren Scott's economic analysis that goes with that. And if that bill needs to be amended or changed or edited, there's going to be some of that political function in there. Not saying the lobbyists can't help, but he's not going to be able to get in there and edit the legislation to where it can get passed.
you haven't worked with lobbyists in a while.
Well, just saying that there is some X's and O's that need to happen, but look, it's very important. Lawrence Scott is a state economist. We're getting him to do the economic analysis because it has to be credible when it goes to the state legislature.
I'm familiar with him. He's great. He's been an expert in
I hope
cases
that-
before.
I hope that helps.
Absolutely.
Right. Are there any, I see no more questions. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you very much, Lisa, Taylor. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you being here tonight. Item I, approval of an agreement between Ascension Parish and Leadership Ascension Fund Phase 2 of the Team of Dreams All Abilities Baseball Field to allow the construction of a concession and restroom building. I have a motion by Mr. Melanson and a second somewhere over there by Mr. Robert, but I want to have Mr. Compton make some comments, and I think that if you'll introduce yourself, please. I have a little present for y'all I'd like for you to help me with. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I'm Lynette Erlinson. I'm president of the team that the Leadership Ascension team that brought forth this project, and we are very grateful for all the support and help that we've had so far with this project, and extremely excited that we're entering phase 2 and plan to play ball in the spring. So thank you very much and appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Ms. Linda, did you prepare the summary that I asked about the financials, please, and where you are in your goal to get this concession restroom building started?
Yes. I took a look at our financials of what we currently have and what the cost is of phase 2. We're $9,047 short, but we do have a commitment from the Greater Baton Rouge Fair that they plan to donate $10,000 in January. So pending that occurring, then we would be whole with the project.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to offer you some more money if I
Well,
could.
I may be back if that doesn't happen, but we have a verbal commitment that they're planning in January to deliver those funds to us as a donation. So
We would love to be able to acknowledge them if they do that. So please do be back with us. That would
All
be
right.
that would be a great gift to the parish. So thank you very much. Mr. Lawler, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Is that donation contingent on anything?
no, not
Okay,
contingent
good.
on anything. I just don't have it in my hands.
Oh, no, that's good. That's good. Just making sure.
Well, tell them you
If we
put
can
it
help.
out on live
I
television.
will. You know,
so
it's out there now, right?
how can they take it back?
I know.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thomas.
Is there any money that could be donated to Lala's Field on the West Bank? I mean, you said you want to give away some money, but we need some money on the west side for the Lala's Fields. I mean, is that anything that can be contributed to that?
I don't know that that's on the agenda tonight.
Okay. All right. I just
But you can get that on an agenda, and we're in the Christmas spirit.
All right. Well, let's give us some over there.
Mr. Compton.
Compton?
So this is a Leadership Ascension project, so the Lala Field is a different thing. We're working with the the chamber, we're working with Rotary. We're trying to figure out ways to fund that. That's a $500,000 project to rebuild the grandstand. So right now, we're trying to figure that out.
We just need 200,000. Yeah, 250 wrong.
$200, right? Hold on. I'll take care of that.
Yeah, that's a big Christmas gift.
Yeah, it is.
So maybe we'll work on that for next Christmas.
Greatly appreciated.
But let's try to have something on that by next Christmas.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much. We're not feeling that good tonight. Thank you so much. Are there any objections to the approval of this agreement after it has been motioned and seconded? Are there any other questions? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you very much. Item number 8, introduction of ordinances. Introduction of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, Buildings and Regulations. Buildings and Building Regulations. Have a motion by Mr. Cagnolati to introduce. Item 9, public hearing ordinances. A, reading of an ordinance to revoke an existing 15-foot drainage servitude located across the rear of the former lot XXB, which I'm not going to even pretend to know what that is, of the Wayne Arsenault property along Louisiana Highway 74. The planning staff recommendation move this to the agenda via the ULDC. Have a motion to introduce. Kenneth needs to read that? Okay. All right.
Ordinance. Purpose, to revoke an existing 15-foot drainage servitude located across the rear of former lot XXB of the Wayne Arsenault property along LA Highway 74. Property as depicted on the map showing consolidation of lots tract F1E, lot XXB, and south 40 foot of lot A, creating tract DG-1 by David B. Fazekas, dated June 16, 2021, and recorded at instrument number 103-1269. Whereas the petitioner has petitioned the Ascension Parish Council to revoke an existing 15-foot drainage servitude located across the rear of former lot XXB of the Wayne Arsenault property along LA Highway 74, property as depicted on the map showing consolidation of lots tract F1E, lot XXB, and the south 40 foot of lot A, creating tract DG-1 by David B. Fazekas, dated June 16, 2021, and recorded at instrument number 103-1269. And whereas the Planning Department and Engineering Department have reviewed and researched said request and have no objection to the revocation, the Parish of Ascension hereby ordains that it grants approval of the revocation of an existing 15-foot drainage servitude located across the rear of former lot XXB of the Wayne Arsenault property along LA Highway 74, property as depicted on the map showing consolidation of lots tract F1E, lot XXB, and the south 40 foot of lot A, creating tract DG-1 by David B. Fazekas, dated June 16, 2021, and recorded at instrument number 103-1269. Attached here to and made a part hereof as Exhibit A. Repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby and henceforth repealed. Severability, if any provision of this ordinance is held to be invalid, such invalidity shall not affect other provisions herein, which can be given effect without the invalid provisions, and to this end, the provisions of the ordinance are hereby declared to be severable. Effective date, this ordinance shall become effective 15 days after adoption.
Chair would entertain a motion to open the public hearing. Motion by Mr. Cagnolati, second by Mr. Mason. A motion by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Cagnolati to close the public hearing. Motion by Mr. Mason to move the ordinance. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item D, reading of an ordinance amending Section 16-1 of the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances adopted by the Ascension Parish Council on June 20th, 1996, adopting a pay classification plan to adjust pay ranges to allow for cost of living increases. Mr. Dupatti.
Purpose, to amend the ordinance adopted on November 4, 2021, amending Section 16-1 of the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances adopted by the Ascension Parish Council on June 20th, 1996, adopting a pay classification plan to a tiered COLA approach based on labor grade, whereas the Parish of Ascension through the Ascension Parish Council under lawful session passed an ordinance adopting an official pay classification plan, and whereas the original ordinance established a uniform system for reimbursing, promoting, and classifying Ascension Parish personnel, and whereas the plan was last amended on November 4th, 2021,
and is in need of further revision. And whereas the Human Resources Director has prepared a new and improved pay plan, and whereas the parish president has accepted this revised plan and proposed said plan to the parish council for review. Now therefore be it ordained that the Ascension Parish Council does hereby authorize an amendment of the pay classification plan attached as Exhibit A, proposed by the Human Resources Department and submitted by the parish president, to a tiered COLA approach of 7%, 5%, 4.2%, 3.25%, and 2.5%, based on labor grade. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as printed by law. This ordinance having been submitted to vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
A motion by Mr. Lambert and a second by Mr. Robert to open a public hearing. A motion by Mr. Mason, second by Mr. Cagnolati to close the public hearing. A motion by Mr. Mason to move the ordinance. Are there any questions?
One question.
I see some. Mr. Lawler is first. Mr. Lambert, I'll get you next. Mr. Lawler.
Well, couple questions. Will this result in actual raises? I know we're increasing the pay plan, but is this going to result in actual raises for all of our employees based on those percentages? And when will it result? When can they expect to see that?
So yes, it will increase their salaries by the percentages that are included in the tiers. The ranges will move with the people, so if they're at the bottom of the range, they'll move up. If they're maxed out, it'll move up, so they will get the full increase. And it'll start in the pay period beginning December 27th of this year, because that once this is passed and we have to have the time, elapse for the 10 days and it goes into effect, so it'll start the 27th. If this passes, we hope to notify the staff on Monday to give them the details so they understand what's going to happen, and they'll hopefully understand and get all that information Monday.
Gotcha. As much as I love a cost of living raise, I've always viewed it as kind of socialism. Everybody's getting the same thing. There's, it's a very socialist way of doing things. To me, capitalism is the key. I'm much more performance-based. We've had 2 years without performance-based raises. We've had people that have had a 28% raise earlier this year that just came out of the blue. When can our employees expect to see a performance-based system? Because I'll tell you why it's important. Employees want to work hard. If they see people getting raises, they want to attain that. In my opinion, performance-based raises encourages people to work harder, and that's an opportunity that we've been denying them now for 2 years. When can we expect to give them this? Because I can tell you, I know employees out there that have gone over and above, and they're just getting this little socialist cost of living raise. They deserve more than that.
And I'm glad you're asking that, because there's kind of two things that go along with each other. The COLA is the first one, and the merit is the second. The COLA is just to try to keep up with inflation. The Bureau of Labor Statistics for November 10th, I think they put out for October, it's 6.2% for the 12 months previous. So this is an attempt just to try to keep up with inflation, and the tiers are to try to help the ones that are at the bottom of the scale, because obviously they're impacted more than the people at the top. The second part to this is the merits. We finished the evaluations about a month ago, and now we're working on a plan to try to we want to create a merit system that is not just this year, it's not just next year. We're hoping to come to you with an ordinance for the first quarter of next year, and it is something that will live through administration to administration. We want to do the same thing with the COLA. We want to put some methodology down so that it's not just one administration or 1 year that it's somebody's idea. It's something that is logical, it's best practice, and that we can, hopefully get everyone to vote on and agree that this is the best way to move forward, so that one, you can take care of inflation, and number two, you consistently help those good performers because their evaluations result in that merit increase.
So we do have performance-based evaluations completed, is that correct?
We finished the evaluations last month, yes. So those are done, and those are going to be used for that merit system.
And when can we expect to see people start getting merit raises? I know these are tough questions, but you know what? We got a lot of employees working hard.
No, and that's why we're targeting the first quarter. Again, we want to do this the right way, and we want to make sure it's objective, it's logical, and that it's something that, again, we can do moving forward. So when the new HR director gets in, that's going to be a big first task. We've already started talking, and we have some plans, but we want to get them on board, get this down, and if the timing works out right, the first quarter of next year, you'll get an ordinance and the merit plan. a suggested ordinance of the methodology for this moving forward. So it would capture what we plan to do and that you could do for years moving forward.
I want to make sure that in the first quarter, we have high-performing employees getting the merit raise also. I know Coach hears me on that. He's going to hold y'all to that first quarter. I'll be honest, I don't think I have any parish employees that live in my district anymore. So I'm not, this doesn't help me votes-wise, but I know we have a lot of good parish employees that were superstars for the past years, 10 years, that deserve this. So if we can look at doing something for them, like I said, we got people that go over and above during COVID, and they haven't gotten anything. And we've had other people in the administration, 28% raise for nothing. That doesn't go over well with them.
And we have the same goal, and I know Coach is going to call me if we don't do this. You notice he makes me sit next to him during these meetings so he can make sure we get this done. But no, we're going to make sure this gets done.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so any other questions? Mr. Lambert, did you have one?
Yeah, I would just go ahead and suggest, I know Mr. Diaz doesn't have any plans tonight, so he can go ahead and call in HR and let's get this started pretty quick. But no, just looking at the salaries, the increase, I mean, let's face it, this is really looking good for our employees. The labor grade, everything is looking up. So I commend the staff, but December the 27th, we have to have something happen here, and we need, very quick.
Absolutely, and that's the fastest we can get it done. And just to kind of add to what you're saying, we also have coming up is the salary study that SSA has been working on. So again, this is all timing, trying to make sure that we ensure that the steps are done in the right order so that an employee isn't left behind, that they don't get a market adjustment and then they get left behind with the next step. So we're trying to make sure all three of those mesh together, this COLA, then the market study, and then the merits.
Thank you.
Mr. Robert?
I just wanted to point out, or I guess commend on the move that y'all made with the cost of living wages as more of a tier level set raise than anything else. For the mere sense that obviously people with higher salaries need a cost of living raise less. And they're going to have a higher percent of cost of living raise anyways because they have a higher salary. So it allows the money to go where it needs to go, especially for those types of people and employees that are living from check to check. So congratulations and keep it up. And I'd also like to see some of those performance-based incentives, and we can do that. Raises, we can do that many different ways. And I know that y'all have different methods of that, and maybe in the future we could put some of that on display so employees or employees that don't know of certain goals can get more involved. And if we need more goals, we can find more of those too.
Sure, no, absolutely. And I do want to also thank the administration, especially John Diaz, for challenging us to get this done. The idea was novel and it's worked out great. The math was a little bit of a challenge, but we made it work. And we've actually had a little bit of interest from other parishes of how we did this and other entities because it does make sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, I extend my congratulations on that too. We've talked privately about it, but that is a great thing that you all have done to make sure that is graduated for those who are on the lower end of the scale. Coach Thomas.
Yes, I want to congratulate the administration, and in talking to them months and months ago about this, they was stayed to their word and did what they said they was going to do. And John Diaz and himself and Mr. Goldsmith in talking to them and allowing them to know, hearing the voices of the workers coming to us and asking us about raises and stuff like that. They was true to their word, kept their word, and we appreciate it. They appreciate it very much, the workers, the employees. So thank y'all, and again, administration, come through again, so appreciate it.
Absolutely, and I do want to also mention Megan Babin. She put a lot of work in this too as well, and I don't want to miss her. She's unfortunately not here tonight. She's finishing up a vacation, but she put a lot of work into this.
We appreciate Megan. Any other questions, gentlemen? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. I'd like to take a brief break here. Councilman Turner has arrived. I think Gavin is still here. I know that Councilman Turner had some questions relative to the project on an earlier item on the agenda, and we promised that when Councilman Turner arrived, he could address those issues that he had. So the floor is yours, Councilman Turner.
Thank you, Derek. Well, the main question we have is what's the status on the project, and because it's been going on for quite a while, and how long was the project originally supposed to take?
The original length of the project, or from here out?
Yes, well, both.
Okay. Hold on one second. Let me grab my laptop. I apologize. So I just talked with him in the back. I don't know if I've been able to find the start date of the project, but for the completion, we talked about start scheduling our road crews with the parish to start looking towards the end of March as far as repaving the roads. They're about a third done with their testing. Currently, they're on the back end of I think there's like 15% of pipe left to lay in the ground. A lot of the stuff that we're waiting on right now is the leveling of the manholes and stuff like that. They are actively addressing the road issues as far as making sure the roads are passable. They're in as good of condition as they can. Part of their contract is to maintain that, to make sure that there's no issues. Right now,
My quick question is, as far as when they say roads are passable, they mean for like a 4x4 or a regular car?
I mean, it's a regular road, so I mean, a 4x4 is not needed to go over these roads. It should be stabilized. I mean, I know some of them have been rough in the past, which have been addressing, and I'll make sure our guy that's going out there checking on it, if he sees anything that's particularly bad, to address them to fix it.
And how often are they checking the roads?
They're out there every day. Our guy goes out twice a week or so to go check out the situation.
Because I asked that question because I get phone calls constantly saying that there's nobody out there working for weeks at a time, and so I just don't see how the people that live in that area are not seeing the workers, and they're saying that they're out there daily.
Based on so when Carl took over the project, he went back and looked at some of their history with their inspections to find out how much work was actually being done. As of recently, starting back in September, we've really started to push them. There shouldn't be any time, unless that road's already complete with all the piping that's in the ground, they should be out there. They're out there working. We are very thoroughly looking at their inspection reports to make sure that they're actually performing enough work. They weren't out there much the day before or yesterday when we had the rain, but I don't know. Aside from COVID exposure, which they had about 4 months ago, where they weren't out there for 10 days, I'm not really sure of any other length of time recently where they would have not been there for days or weeks out of the project, but I will definitely investigate it.
And were you able to pull up when did the contract start?
to get back with you on that one. I don't think I have the start date of the project. It was, if I remember correctly, it was started June 11th of 2019. I found it.
And can you tell when they were originally supposed to be completed?
Originally, they were supposed to be complete essentially a year ago.
And that's my issue. I mean, I don't think they should have even got a change order done because I don't think they're doing an adequate enough job at this current time.
As far as the time goes, this is what we've told them is our last extension of time for their project. We have explored potentially going after their bonding company to get this project complete. However, the time frame to get that in motion and to get it resolved would drag it out longer than what we expect. If they can't complete it within this next time frame, then, you know, that's when we'll have to go after liquidated damages. Part of the issue of why we're allowing to extend it is there is some fault on our side with getting the testing lab to have their contract in a timely manner. We had something that was submitted in June, and the contractor, or not the contractor, the testing agency hasn't been given a notice to proceed as of yet.
And my other issue is, I mean, we're giving them an extra 225 days to complete a contract, plus additional money. I don't understand why.
The additional money is for unforeseen conditions. It's not associated with additional overhead or anything like that. Basically, as they were doing the project, there was things that were missed out of the design, which is mostly the soil stabilization. There were some things that when they were originally going to bore through a section of the pipe or a section of the road, they couldn't do it through that section because of the soils, and we've had to adjust the money.
And I guess I'm asking your opinion on this one as, you know, for the parish. I mean, are they doing their job adequately? Are they working as they should be working? I mean, because my answer is probably no. But I'm not an expert on.
Well, to be fair, there has been some lacking on our side as far as proper management. I would expect that they should have been done. They have had a lot of issues. Mainly part of the reason why we're extending it at this point is because of the fact that they're relying on us to give them answers and to get stuff moving on our side in an appropriate amount of time, and we haven't done that. And we need to make sure that we get this stuff done. Like I said, it is to a point where we are looking at going after their bond, but the time frame to get the bond done, you know, what we felt as a group, the engineer, myself, Ken, Carl, we all felt that we'd rather give them this opportunity to get it done. This is their last chance. Get it done, get it finished. We need to move on with the project, get it over.
I mean, because 225 days is almost another year. Until residents have their roads fixed and everything, I personally think that's too much. My preference would be to terminate the contract now. Because I don't think they're fulfilling the terms of their contract and they're just putting it off and providing subpar work.
The quality of work hasn't been an issue. The time frame has been the biggest issue. You know, when you do contracting, you have your three. You have your quality, price, and time. Well, we've got the quality and we got the price. We're just a little bit lacking on the time. So I don't disagree with you that this project is taking on way too long, and we've heard a lot of the constituents complain. Our guys have been out to visit and talk with plenty of them. But if we cut their contract now, what our engineer had all talked about was it would push it another 6 months past what completion date we're giving it to us, because you have the argument between us and the bonding company to determine, did we give them enough fair chances? Is it something that we did, which at this point we had some issues that I felt put us at a liability. If there's a time frame where we're going to argue about that, so while during that's happening, no work's being done on the project. If we pull it, then we have to go out for bid. The bonding company has to get additional quotes. then we have to move on to have a contract with them to extend the project. So we felt like this was our best opportunity to stress how important it is to get this done. We asked them to do a completion, how are they going to complete it? What are they going to do differently than they've been doing this whole time in order to get the project done? They provided us, it was satisfactory to, and in our opinion, and we're going to hold them to it.
And when do the 225 days start?
The 225 days actually started already. We are probably, let's see, the original contract expired, don't quote me on this, I think it was October 9th. We had a change order to extend it to November 9th, but we were already past that date by the time we were having our next council meetings, and we couldn't pay them. So now the new contract date is April 23rd.
So that's when they do to be completed, or
That's when it's going to be completed. And I met with them before they left about when we can start scheduling our roads to get recovered and repaved and everything like that. As soon as they get all the testing done for each of the sections of pipe, then we'll be ready to move forward.
And is there any way to have them come back every month to give an update to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing?
We can ask them, yes. We can put it usually like on the utilities or?
No, the main agenda. I mean, the main council meeting.
Okay, yes.
For the record, I did ask them to stay.
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. That's all the questions I have.
No problem.
So Gavin, if I may ask you, I think that other people have some questions too, but what is causing the delay with the testing company that you accredit to our end of this? What do we need to do to solve that problem?
So we were originally going to go with another contractor that we had already had a contract with. It was going to be outside of the grant. Due to some of the negotiations with their contract, they decided they didn't want to sign it. Then we moved to using the contractor that's already on site, that was already approved under the grant. We just got them approved. We had the grant department approve their contract price, so we're amending their contract to include it within part of the grant. So the only thing they're waiting on is our approval. So that should be that we gave them a verbal on our approval and an email saying that we approved their contract. We just need to follow up on make sure that they're going to be out there when we're on their schedule.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Robert.
I guess the thing that disturbs me a little bit is that our management and that our side, meaning the parish, isn't providing them with answers. And I understand mistakes happen and I understand things happen, but what I'm saying that bothers me is we can't hold them to produce something if we're already 2 months almost into past the original contract date and they're still waiting on us to give an actual answer or sign off on something. Yes. It's impossible for them to have done this contract date. So I do share a lot of your concerns, Councilman Turner, because from the beginning of this project, I did get and have gotten a lot of calls because of the mess on the roads and because of water issues, digging up water pipes, hitting pipes, busted pipes. I had to make several phone calls to you and to Mr. Dawson, and I get it, but we shouldn't be going after them for the days when we're the problem with that. We do need to discuss. It's not necessarily their quality work, but I mean, in my view, that's quality. Your conditions and how you clean up around and how you leave the place is just as much of your quality job as anything else. I think that should be addressed with that company. And you said there's a new contractor in. Is this the same contractor that was doing this before?
The same general contractor is doing the work. It's the testing company that was going to be. We were trying to get it with somebody that had done the original testing, and now we moved it to the one that's making sure all the pipes sealed, making sure all the runs are correct and everything like that.
Okay, and, just to reiterate what Chairman Casdo was saying, we do need to have these things in order. We need to get them the answers as soon as possible, whatever we can do as the council to help y'all in whatever way, shape, or fashion, expedite this and get these people's roads and their homes back to normal.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, anything else?
I guess it's my last issue is that if Councilman Lawson asked them to stay and they left anyway, I just have an issue with that.
I'm gonna take partial blame for that because they were walking out and I stayed in there, so I didn't know if they were gonna sit or not. So my fault. But I did ask about the water situation. The line is down for the new water line. They are chlorinating it to make sure it's clean, and then they're supposed to be doing the swap over for the water quality issue.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gavin.
Okay, thanks.
We're going to proceed to finish up the ordinances, and then we'll hear from Christelle, who has made it. But I want to get Jerome an opportunity to get himself on the road to New Orleans here. So let's move along to item G. Reading of an ordinance to amend Appendix 2, Section 17-2087, signs, off-premises sign standards of the Parish Unified Land Development Code to increase the spacing and prohibit construction of stacked billboards. Mr. Dupatti.
Purpose to amend Appendix 2, Section 17-2087, signs, off-premises sign standards of the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to place restrictions on off-premise signs, including billboards, panels, and other advertising signs, and now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, Appendix 2, Section 17-2087, signs, off-premises signs standards be amended and supplemented as further described in Exhibit A, attached hereto and made a part hereof. Repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby and henceforth repealed. Severability, if any provision of this ordinance is held to be invalid, such invalidity shall not affect other provisions herein which can be given effect without the invalid provisions, and to this end the provisions of this ordinance are hereby declared to be severable. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. This ordinance having been submitted to vote thereon as follows.
Thank you, Mr. Dupatti. Mr. Jerome, do you have some, I think you wanted to address us regarding this issue.
I did, Chairman Castle and the council. This ordinance originated in strategic planning with under Chairman Robert's tutelage, and it moved to the Zoning Commission as the process allows. And at the Zoning Commission, they basically pulled away the cap and trade aspects of the billboards. So originally, we had a number of billboards. In order to put one up, you had to pull one down, all right? So we had some opposition to that by some of the billboard operators in the parish. Additionally, at strategic planning, Council Member Lambert had asked that we put a clause in there that says that any removal of the billboards would be at the owner's expense. When we prepared the ordinance, that unfortunately was left out. So I would recommend that we put that language back in the ordinance about the ownership and the responsibility of the buyer or the owner having to pay for the cost of removal. All right.
Thank you. Mr. Lott?
Right.
Yeah, taking that into account, I'd like to make an amendment to this on section D1A, change it from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet, and also add, I guess the best place for this would be E, to add that removal of the billboards will be at the owner's expense.
Perfect. Okay.
For the purpose of construction.
Yes.
Okay.
What Jerome said.
However Jerome said.
Good. All right.
So I have, let's go ahead and move appropriately. You made that motion. Do you have a second? I have a second and a third. So I have a second to Mr. Mason. Are there any, we would vote now on the amendment. and then we have to go back and vote on the motion, but we also have a public hearing we have to do. So let's take care of the motion first, and then we'll open the public hearing after that.
Just for clarification, can you repeat the,
Aaron?
Yes, sir. It would be section D1A. It would change 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet, and then add a section E, which would, and I hope I get this right, Jerome, please correct me if I don't, would require that the removal of a billboard comes at the expense of the owner of the billboard. And I'm assuming that would include the entire structure, pole and all.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, you may, because I don't know a lot about
Because
it.
I think it would be item D1C.
Okay.
right, First off. Secondly, I'd say that removal of any off-site sign structure is at the owner's expense.
That is my amendment.
There
Thank you,
you go.
Jerome.
There you go.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions?
I do just have a question, and I'm not saying I oppose this part of the amendment, but you're also amending, changing the distance that a billboard can be from another billboard from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet.
That's correct.
Okay, and like I said, I'm for it. I'm for it. I just wanted to make sure that we all were aware of that.
Turn.
And I'm assuming that's what you were addressing.
We can't have any
Yeah.
more of turn to turn.
That's all.
All right. Any other questions? So the motion is on the amendment, the vote is on the amendment. There is a motion and a second, and what is the will? Are there any objections?
I'm object.
We have one objection, so Madam Secretary, open the
Thank you.
voting, whatever we call this thing. Chase, you need to vote. All right. That motion passes 9-1. Now, to the original amendment. We need the motion to open the public hearing. Have a motion and a second. Have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Motion to move the ordinance. And we have a second by Mr. Mason to move the ordinance. Are there any other questions? And we have one objection, so let's open the voting records. Madam Secretary. And that motion passes 9-1. Thank you very much. Give me a second here to turn my page. Item make sure I get this right. So, item J, I didn't want to lose my place here. Reading of an ordinance to create a road infrastructure district designated as a parish road of Ascension Infrastructure District number IDD 2021-03, Clare Court, pursuant to the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Section 17-4011, approval of a final plat procedure, Infrastructure Development District. Mr. Dupatti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Purpose, to create a road infrastructure district designated as Parish of Ascension Road Infrastructure District, IDD 2021-03, pursuant to Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 4 of Subdivision Regulations, Section 17-4011, approval of final plat procedure, F, Infrastructure Development District, whereas the Ascension Parish is a local governmental subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, and whereas Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body over subdivisions, and whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4, 1993 identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish, and now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that a road infrastructure district designated as Ascension Road Infrastructure IDD 2021-03 be created pursuant to the Unified Land Development Code of Ascension Parish, Louisiana, Appendix 4 Subdivision Regulations, Section 17-4011, approval of final plat, Procedure F, Infrastructure Development District with the boundaries of the Road Infrastructure District defined as and made a part of the subdivision of Ascension Parish named Clare Court subdivision as more fully described in Exhibit A, petition, and Exhibit 2, create an Ascension Parish Road Infrastructure District attached here to and made a part hereof. Severability, in the event any portion of this ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. The effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. This ordinance having been submitted to vote, the vote thereon was as follows.
I have a motion by Mr. Robert to open a public hearing, second by Mr. Mason. Motion by Mr. Mason, second by Mr. Cagnolati to close the public hearing. Motion by Mr. Mason to move the ordinance. I have a second by Mr. Lambert. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Not now. Right now, we're going to invite Ms. Christelle. And I think that Patrick is also going to be participating in some of her presentation. Christelle, I'm so sorry that you were delayed by an accident.
It's a truck off the road before Sorrento. It's very interesting, apparently, because everyone had to stop and look at it. So, anyway,
I understand.
It's good to be here.
Thank you for being here. I asked you a few weeks ago if you would come and talk to us about a study that began with a number of years ago. I couldn't even remember how far back. It was called our Efficiency and Effectiveness Study. And I think I see that it started in May of 2017.
Well, that was actually an update.
That was an update.
It was the first year of the Matassa administration. So that would be
when we started.
16, I think, yeah.
Okay, so and then we got a little bit sideways with the flood.
Yeah.
But we appreciate all the work you did. That I don't remember what night it was, but you met with us. You gave us a number of recommendations.
Right.
And so I was eager by the end of this year to understand where we were on those recommendations. Those were adopted by this council, by the previous council.
Right.
And so I would like to know where we are and how much further do we have to go. And I want to, these gentlemen, all part of a newer administration and a different council, to sign on to those recommendations that you made back during a previous administration.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting us to be here. I am here with Cody Sesier, my colleague. And when, I'll be honest with you, when you first called and asked us to come give an update, I was a little bit nervous. I remember being asked to do that in 2017 and maybe even after that, and there wasn't a lot to say. There were a lot of things that needed to be done, but it was hard to get traction. I am here tonight to tell you that I'm bringing you an early Christmas present because you've gotten so much done in recent months, despite COVID, despite challenges, that it's pretty exciting. And Patrick and I worked on some of the important elements that I wanted to share with you. So I think that you'll be very pleasantly surprised as we go through it. So this was actually called an Efficiency and Effectiveness Study, and it was designed to reduce the cost of government, improve the level of services provided to parish residents, and improve management's ability to provide oversight and report to the community on the quantity and quality of services provided. So we were asked to do everything from benchmark against other similar parishes like St. Tammany, where they do have a fairly wealthy parish and they do have good revenue and strong sustainable revenue, and also some parishes that have a strong industrial base. So we tried to provide some information that we thought would be effective. I'm going to skip the study methodology, but I will show you the rather startling estimated population growth, and I'm just sorry that we weren't able to find comparable numbers for what has actually happened, but I think that it's probably pretty accurate and still pretty accurate on your projections. And so at the time, our point was that you needed to get some of these things in place because the larger you got, the more you would stress your drainage systems, your transportation systems, the skills and ability and knowledge of your staff, et cetera, your technology. And so I think that, the timing of this update is really very good. We looked at other parishes, as I mentioned, Livingston, East Baton Rouge, St. John the Baptist, and St. Tammany, trying to do some benchmarking and figure out why some costs seemed higher in Ascension Parish than they did in other parishes. The slide and the comparative parish data is old data, so do not think that it has remained the same. Some of it had to do with the size of government, parish government. Some of it had to do with the density of the particular parish, et cetera. But it was very helpful at the time, and I thought you would be interested to know that that was a vital part of the data that went into the study. So now the priority recommendations that Councilwoman Casso mentioned. The first one was to reorganize parish government. There was not a good organization chart. There was not a strong and very clear chain of command at the time. And this slide is actually the original slide from 2017, where we give you the recommendation and the update, and we will do that for the 11 recommendations. So the parish council really did not have a good, transparent view of the organization chart and the organization. And it's fine for an organization chart to change over time, but it shouldn't radically change as an organization goes from year to year. I'm delighted to tell you that in your parish budget book, you have an updated and current organization chart that is functionally related, and although this is rather small, the slide on the next page actually shows you the infrastructure division, the finance division, planning and facilities management division, health and community services division, and Lamar Dixon, all reporting to the CAO, reporting to the parish president. This is very much a corporate type of structure for government, as close as you can get, and very functional, very clear. So I think that the fact that it's in your budget book and the public can see it, and it's very recent and updated is important. We had to have this to complete the compensation study, and I'm going to go faster in a few minutes, but I would like Cody Saucier to come up and give you a little, just a brief update on that, because we've had some questions about it, and people have been waiting for it, and so Cody, can you?
Just a quick update on the compensation study. So we have delivered the initial tranche of draft data to the administration, which we've had a couple of meetings about to review. We were missing about 15 or 20 or so position descriptions for some older jobs that hadn't been looked at recently. We've recently received all of those position descriptions from Megan and are in the process of benchmarking those last 15 or so positions. And once we have all that kind of ready to go and finalized, so hopefully over the next few weeks, we'll be moving forward with a plan for implementation. So we have the bulk of the work completed, and then that draft data and information over to the administration. So that's where we are now. Do y'all have any questions about the compensation study or what we're doing with that? Great. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Cody. And of course, it will be coming back to you once the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. The organization chart that you're looking at will be supplemented by an organization chart for East Ascension drainage. It was very difficult to know exactly where and how to depict the fact that you do have some shared services, but we met recently to talk about that, and I'll be working with the Drainage Board to come up with what that ought to be and how we have that as well, so that the citizens can see exactly how that comes together and then how it links to the current organization chart. So making progress there as well.
Christelle, can I interrupt at this point?
Sure.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Waggersback.
Yeah, this is just a quick one. This is up to date?
Yes.
So I guess I'm a little confused at the far left, the Director of Infrastructure, who drainage, transportation, utilities all reports to. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, so this, would you like to take that, Mr. Goldsmith?
That has been the structure actually for a while. Functionally, right now, that infrastructure director has been focusing on utilities.
Okay.
And so that has been, I think, a spot, I think that Coach would probably say that we've needed for a while, so they have had that structure. I think moving forward, and as Christelle said, we're working through now what the East Ascension drainage means and how that looks and what the reporting relationships means, because that will change this. I think that's going to be in Christelle's court to try to figure out that, and like you said, working with the board, how that structure will change.
Okay, that just didn't look accurate, so, and it looked really off, so I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Mr. Lawler?
Yeah, I just had a question about the Director of Health and Community. I'm trying to put names to everything.
Aha.
Director of Health and Community Services Division.
So this is from the budget book that when we put out the draft budget. Since then, you've actually helped us with some of these new positions and new titles. So I think what we actually passed was Director of Health and Community Development. And so now that has been approved and the ordinance has added them to the grade scale, we can now start trying to find that individual so we can have somebody that is over that and actually has a job description. So that was one of those that we were working on, and we have been working with Christelle to try to help advance the mental health, the health unit, the animal control, put somebody that we kind of talked when we were going through these as a visionary over those units.
Gotcha. And maybe this is kind of unrelated, but do we need to have a job description? Can we use an old job description? We have a gap in transportation right now. We have a definite need to have somebody there. Can we speed this process up to get somebody in there?
So we worked on that today because we had studied this job. We first looked at it in July and then again in October, but it was not in the packet of information that came to the council in Donaldsonville as one of the ones to be approved. So it will have to come to you when we tie the bow on the compensation study, and you will have to approve that as a new title. You approve all new job titles, and there might even be one or two others.
Do we have a job title though that could fit in? I mean, we lost somebody in August. There's been no replacement of that person.
Possibly so.
And we're suffering
I think
right now.
you're looking for somebody at a pretty high level, but we can certainly look at that. You can certainly change a job description. I don't know how many other incumbents share that job description. That would be the only thing. But we want to make sure the minimum qualifications are enough to get the skills that you need in that person to be successful. But I'm glad you mentioned that because we will look at that.
Okay, thanks.
That's it.
Okay. The second recommendation was develop a performance management system and revise personnel policies. And this actually was almost, the performance management system almost came to be before the end of the last administration, but that is a very difficult thing to drop into an organization as they're getting ready to have significant transition. I'm happy to say that, and there were serious problems with policies and the personnel manual, but I'm happy to say that the update is that a performance review was conducted last year, and the second round of that was just completed, and it was used for merit that will be done in the first quarter of next year. I think the most exciting thing to us is that staff is working on an ordinance to make sure that you're not going to have these gaps between administration where some employees are reviewed and then they might go a year or two without getting any feedback at all. They really need that consistency in order for you to get the productivity that you need and the feedback to your staff. So I think that, the hope is that will get put together and come to you fairly soon. And then we also conducted recently a human resources audit. And that was a fairly comprehensive audit. We actually used a subcontractor who used to work at Human Resources Solutions. You'll meet her in January, hopefully. But we collaborated with her to conduct the audit, and there were some opportunities for improvement that do go back to the original study having to do with personnel policies, et cetera, and processes. However, I must say that your interim director has been a joy to work with. She's on top of things. She has handled open enrollment and all sorts of other major projects with the staff that she's had. And I think she needs to be commended for that, honestly, by the council. You are getting a new HR director, so that is one of the position, new job descriptions that we shared, and that person will start before the end of this calendar year.
20th.
Okay. So that's recommendation 2. A lot of work still to be done, but it's been identified and tackled. So I think that you'll see big things happening this year, especially with the new leadership. Item 3 is improve productivity through mandatory leadership and supervisory skills training. And there was really not much of anything when we did the study. I think the parish invested in some online, what we call program learning that people could take advantage of if they wanted to improve their own skills. That's really not a best-in-class model. But during the past year, DPW did conduct a needs assessment among their supervisors and did some leadership training. The good news is that we're working on a curriculum for everyone that will include leadership development. This continues to be a need, and in the work that we did for you all with DPW, came up again and again. Ensure that all employees meet the minimum qualifications. When we did the study initially, people were placed into positions without checking minimum qualifications, despite the fact that minimum qualifications were very low, almost across the board, which also kept your salaries depressed. But it allowed people to put individuals into positions that they thought they were appropriate for. As we tighten up your minimum qualifications to get better talent, that becomes less and less of a possibility. So this is really good news. The hiring processes have been upgraded. I don't know, doesn't mean it didn't happen, I don't know of a single case where someone was brought in who did not meet the minimum qualifications, because the process is different and the process is better monitored. So I think that has really been tightened up, and I'm just thrilled about that. That's a real morale breaker when people see someone come in who is not qualified for the job they've been appointed to.
Christelle, can I interrupt you just there?
Yes.
Mr. Cagnolati has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, this ties in with this. We discussed this back in 2018, 2019, as far as hiring qualified people. We had an issue with professionals. We have doctors that are performing services, we have nurses, we have counselors, and our experience has been that the people that work in those departments, the department head said it's very hard to compete in the private sector, to try to get qualified, because we simply weren't paying enough. And there was a gap discussion about it's going to give them so much more than other people. There may be a question of why they make it so much. Well, they have certifications, they have licenses, they have lots of things. Has that been addressed?
I would say it's in the process of being addressed. You nailed it. As you ask people to take on work that requires certain certifications or a master's in social work or certain number of years of experience for a license, then salaries follow that they definitely go up. We have not expected that from all of the staff, mental health, public health, et cetera. And so I think that as those areas are rethought and the opportunity to have a higher level of service and to collaborate in the community for other services, that some of that will take care of itself. You do have some competitors in Ascension Parish. We ran into them in West Feliciana Parish. They are in that public health mental health space, and they rob people of their employees. They literally come in and look over the staff and then cherry pick, and in some cases offer them as much as 40% more to do basically the same job that they're doing. Their model is really unsustainable, but somebody must be funding it that it has sustained itself for this long because they've been at this for years, and the tighter the job market becomes, I think the more you're going to see other organizations do that too. So we got to get those things right.
And they offer signing bonuses and all kinds
Absolutely.
of things that we can't do.
That's right. That's exactly right. So you have...
Any idea of the timing when we might?
Well, I think that hopefully as we bring you the compensation study, we will have accounted for that, or it will be as you hear more about reorganizations of some of those areas that have to do with that functional area on the organization chart. But I know that they're especially mental health is working diligently to provide services with the staff that they have and keep their staff, and it has really affected the quality of their work, unfortunately. So thank you for bringing that up.
That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Number 5 is Modernized Parish Technology. And back in 2016-17, it was a very manual, paper-dependent work environment. We were really rather shocked that we would ask finance for information, and people would want to share spreadsheets, or we wanted to run data, and Cody would be left trying to combine spreadsheets. It made it impossible to answer some of the questions that we were trying to answer. So I'm going to say that we have very, very good news here, but I'm going to let the CFO take the credit for a lot of this.
Well, I can't say enough about our IT staff. Definitely a bright spot. Brandon O'Day has done a phenomenal job. Brian Martinez, I mean, there's so many of them. I wish I could list everybody, but they have put in a great effort. And just since this report, I was talking to Brandon today, and I said, we're in phase 3 of Munis, and we've done 3 phases since this report. So that has been a huge success. You mentioned with Munis, with the financials, human resources, purchasing, the employee self-service portal, all that has gone on since this last report. This year we have Open Finance up and running. We have online training systems for the employees. The work order system that you saw the demo of last meeting, that's making great progress. We have the contracts module that we're working on. Sandra is working on that and trying to make sure that all of our contracts stay on track. We now have an online public records request system that Andy is in charge of, and she's taking that paperless, which is a great help to the staff. It saves a lot of time. And then we have the Tyler Parks and Recreation system that's being worked on. So there are a lot of things in the works. I think the staff are also dreaming big on what we can do in the future, how we can do things better. So this is definitely a bright spot for the parish with the technology. We're definitely moving forward.
And that is going to make a tremendous difference in efficiency and effectiveness. That one jump forward. So bravo to the gentleman and the staff that Patrick mentioned. Item 6 is establish departmental dashboards. I think the biggest shock for us when we started this original study was that department directors did not know how many people were in their department. They could not look at anything to figure out where they were with their budget. They could request it from finance, but they really did not have the tools that they needed. I think we all expected that they should be accountable for running their departments. They were driving blind. They really couldn't be held accountable because they didn't have up-to-date information to do so. We also thought that departmental dashboards would be very important for the council and for the public. And part of the reason why is also related to the next recommendation, but it was just impossible. There was no transparency like there is now. So the good news is that the staff is working on an updated strategic plan that needs to be taken care of, and that will include metrics. So we are at least at the top getting the administration to say, here are the things we want to achieve. They're measurable. And although Open Finance has a dashboard, we really still need the strategic plan and the work order system in order to develop the kind of departmental dashboards that will really give you usable information. There just is really no good data available. It's very hard to collect. People in DPW could tell us, well, you know, I can go back on every single day. I have photographs. I can tell you we have GPS systems. But all of that would literally take, you know, multiple full-time employees to pull it together. And that's just not really worth it for you to invest in that. It's better to invest in the technology like the work order system, which you know is coming. To do that. And so it's being actively worked on, and maybe that'll be your Easter present when we come. Is that too ambitious? Next Christmas?
No, I would definitely say this is a priority.
Yeah.
You know, starting with the work order system, the new Munis modules, we need the data to be able to show those dashboards. Munis actually has a dashboard module that we can use and we are planning on using, and so these new systems are going to give the data, and as Christelle mentioned, we're working on a strategic plan to build those metrics, and that is time sensitive. It has to be in the budget when the budget book comes out so we can make sure we get the awards. So we're meeting right now, we're going through those, so that is definitely a push that we're doing a full court press, and I know there's an expectation. I feel the pressure, and we're working on it to get it done, so rest assured it's a priority.
Good deal. Item 7 was to require quarterly budget to performance reporting mainly to the council. Again, that was this entire chapter in our report that these recommendations came from had to do with trying to get that transparency and get information to you and to the public through you. It also had to do with the idea of where is the funding coming from? Where is the funding going? Who is being funded? What positions are being funded by what funding stream? And that was very opaque and hard to pull together. The other factor that I alluded to a moment ago is that unlike any other political jurisdiction that we have ever worked with, your parish president is empowered to hire as many people as he or she sees fit as long as they're not creating a new job. So I'm going to say that again. Once you approve a job title, then that's a job title that they can continue to fill. There's no limit on positions. When you have someone who is trying to be fiscally conservative, you don't have a problem with that. But when you have somebody who wants to hire a lot of people or feels like there's a particular program or area of services that is important to them, they really have the opportunity to do that without any checks and balances. And so our solution to that, because we couldn't get anybody to say that they really wanted to change that, our solution was, then you need reports. And you need to know variations from quarter to quarter. You don't need it every month or every week, but periodically you need to know that. The good news is that now you have information coming to the Finance Committee that allows you to see that. And so you already have had some presentations. Open Finance gives real-time access to data. Departments coming into the Finance Committee on a rotating basis, so you're not being, deluged with information or getting too far down in the weeds, will really work well. The trick is you need a monthly or quarterly report on personnel so that you can kind of track that as well. And I think that's coming. It's manual. Patrick, would you like to say a word about that?
Yes. In fact, I had a conversation with Councilman Lawler today that we are still working on that report because it is a very data-intensive report. I think we were shooting for perfection and trying to get things by department to get that report. We have the structure done, and Megan has gone through and done some manual work at a total level. But because we have employees that are split across departments, we really need, I joke, we need some Brian time, some Brian Martinez, so he can run, and he can build us a report that we can run consistently that splits them out so we can show you by department, by month, how many are added, how many have left. Like I said, we've got the format, it looks great. We just need to get the data by department so we can show that to you. And I'm hoping we can do that soon. And then just something else I'll mention, we've had a lot of great discussions with our Chair Cagnolati for Finance and our Vice Chair Wagasback about moving forward with budget presentations and budget hearings. Some of it's a timing issue. There is not a lot of time between when you get the proposed budget and when you pass it. But that doesn't mean we can't do presentations in the interim, especially for the big departments. So I think we're going to continue those conversations. So Finance will continue to get better information. We'll get more presentations. We've already worked on some formats of what an overall presentation would look like. So that is progressing as well. And I think next year you're going to see a lot of changes, and you're going to get even more data. Whether you like it or not, y'all are going to get more data.
I don't know if some of you remember my former partner, Will Williams.
Christelle, let me
Yes,
take 1
please do.
second. Mr. Lawler had a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple things. First of all, that Patrick's absolutely right. I talked to him today, and I'm glad we're on our way to getting that information, because it's really going to help us. And I hate to correct you on something, but we had talked about, capping the number of employees that a parish president can hire. Several of us want to do that. I think there's still an urge to do that. We think it's important because we didn't have the time. We couldn't get the votes last time. But I look at all my colleagues, and I'll tell you, I think it's important because we don't know who the next parish president's going to be, what their hiring practices are going to be. Mm-hmm. And as you said, at this point, there is no control. We could end up with 15 directors of something if somebody so decided to do that. So that's something I'd urge us over the next year, that we strongly look at capping the number of employees in the parish. There are multiple ways to do it, but it's very important that we do that because we don't know what the future holds. And we kind of went through this in past conversations. If we don't do that, we could find ourselves in a real bind. And this is an opportunity for us to do it. Fortunately, right now, I think we have an administration that does want to limit excessive employees. Mm-hmm. But, if we can reduce the number of employees that we get over time, I think we'll be in a really good position. So I'll ask that we maybe take that up in Finance next year.
Good. And we'd be happy to share what some other places do. What I would really caution you about, and this is not at all what you mentioned, Councilman Lawler, but I was in New Orleans today. For goodness sakes, you have flexibility and you can be nimble and you can decide that the parish needs something and act on that. And that's a 6 month to a year process in New Orleans. I was with the police department today. It was very frustrating. So please don't go back to anything that resembles the civil service system. And I got a lot of civil service clients, but you don't need to go that far. You need to have some checks and balances, as you said, and but not one-dimensional. But I'm glad to hear you say that. So thank you. I appreciate that.
One more. Mr. Wagasback.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I was just going to add to what Aaron said. I mean, I don't know that you want to limit it to a certain amount, but I think I'll go back to what Mr. Diaz has said before, zero-based budgeting. What do we want to accomplish in a year? How much money do we have to do it? There should be a number of employees tied to that. And then if you want to come get more employees, you should have to justify that. Mm-hmm. I think in the private sector, FTEs, full-time employee, you want that employee, you got to go tell somebody why you want it, why you need it, how you're going to pay for it. So I think that should be part of our path forward too, is we strive to put some control around that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good points. Thank you. What I was going to say is, if we ever get that right, my partner Will Williams, who really helped a lot with this original study, has since retired and moved to Naples, Florida. I'm going to fly down to Naples and say, look what they did. This is wonderful. They have real communication and dashboards. The next one we can go through pretty quickly. We felt like the parish was not telling its story very well, and we were hoping that there would be more energy focused on outreach. We think you've done a marvelous job with that, the website, utilizing opportunities for getting the word out, and hiring a communications outreach coordinator, as well as your wonderful communication staff. So unless you have questions on that one, I think that's
Mr. Robert
very
has
well.
a question.
Yes.
I do have a question that relates to that. It's
Yes.
not particularly listed. So if we could add interpersonal communication to that slide, that'd be great. And what I'm talking about is going back to a meeting before when we discussed the work order system. Kind of relates to that also.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect in our parish between the citizen talking to someone after the work order is complete and knowing that it's finished, I guess. It sounds really odd, but I guess what I'm saying, many times I've had constituents reach out to me, when I say many, dozens, where a work order is finished and they didn't know it was finished. In the sense of the last person that did anything with it told them this is where we're at, this is what we can or can't do. I feel like as the parish, we could go a step beyond, especially we were talking about hiring practices and we're talking about competing with the private sector. Any type of service industry, any type of service in the private sector always has some type of, and it doesn't necessarily have to be by phone call, but I think if we could have someone in a different department, and when I say different department, not the same people taking the work orders, and they do a wonderful job. Phenomenal job. But this is a different type of personality that you would want.
Yes.
More so someone that could take these people, call each of the phone numbers after the work order's done, and they can see if they're satisfied with where it is, and if they're not, let's give them the other way and the other avenue they need to explore to pursue the issue that they're having relating to that work order, whether it be talking to someone to get right away, whether it be, looking at engineering in area projects and whatnot, all of the above. And I guess that's a little bit more on the engineering and area projects. I have a lot of citizens that will call about problems in specific areas. If the same person could possibly have a list of the projects ongoing in that area that could particularly affect their drainage, and I'm saying this, most of this is drainage and most of it is roads.
Right.
That could affect that if they could, not saying you have to outreach and call them all, but the people that have work orders pertaining to it, explain that also in the work order. So overall, I think the dashboard, I think the accountability, I think all of it is great. I think communication is key when it comes to dealing with the public. Because I think a lot of these people would be a lot more satisfied.
Right.
Whenever we did 95% of the work, we might have just a little bit left.
Right.
And I mean, that's a deal breaker a lot of times.
Yeah, yeah. And someone who is exceptionally good, well-trained at having those kinds of conversations, as opposed to a more technical person.
And even in the sense to where they can make the
Right.
decisions to say, look, you need to talk to this particular department, or you
Right.
need to put in a work order under a different type
Right.
thing.
Yes.
Or if the parish can't deal with it, this is maybe who you need to talk to deal with it on a personal or
Right.
private.
Got it. Took some notes, so thank you for that. Well, as we get that work order system in, we can do a lot. We can do a lot more than we can do now. Let's go to recommendation 9. At the time that we did the original study, no one could tell us how many vehicles you had in the parish that were owned by the parish. It was a lot of work to find out that you had 153 pickup trucks and cars and leases. It was in flux. A lot of the equipment and vehicles were unusable. They were not being repaired or put back into service at a timely basis at all. There was not really a rhyme or reason. And so you can see on this slide, we were examining what other organizations did and should we have a car allowance and get out of the car business, and there's a lot of machinations about that. The reality is almost everybody struggles with this in public organizations. We've seen very few that really even do it fairly well. But the first step is to really get a very viable fleet unit or department, and you all did find a good leader who's pretty seasoned in fleet. He came in, he got the area organized, he evaluated the skills, he thought you were short-staffed in some of the areas that needed more frequent service levels. Unfortunately, because your talent, you haven't had the bench strength, I've said that before, he has been pulled into working on other assignments. But I do think he got you off to a good start, and hopefully you can find someone with similar kinds of experience to come in and do that. Patrick, I literally typed this while we were talking, and when I reviewed it, I thought, that just looks very odd. So would you like to explain the last bullet on
Sure.
that page?
One thing the administration asked us to do during the budget process is once we got the requests for vehicles to have our fleet, Jade did a great job. Jade Robin looked at all of the vehicles, and he actually denied some. He said, look, I've looked, the mileage doesn't indicate they need a new vehicle, or this one just got this vehicle, I've looked at this one. He evaluated each request individually, and he did turn some down. And so I think that's a positive. Again, I think we're turning a corner, and moving forward, we've talked about even more reports, looking at the mileage, talking about reimbursements versus having a vehicle, different things. So he's really started us down a great road. Unfortunately, he did get pulled off on a few other things, but he's still working with us to continue these efforts.
Yeah, good. Number 10, develop a forward-looking vision for Ascension Parish. In the past, it seemed like things just came up and got taken care of instead of having a true vision of where everyone wanted the parish to go, the administration and the council. We thought that would be important in terms of budget allocations. You talked about zero-based budgeting and prioritization. You can't really do that if you don't know where you're trying to go. The good news is that earlier this past year, we had a strategic planning session in our office with some of the leadership to focus on vision, mission, and values and some goals. And as the administration works on the strategic plan to put in the budget book, I think that will be good information, and that will have to be completed very soon, right? So that needs to be an ongoing process and probably extend out to include council input and make sure that we get there. Last one, continuously upgrade parish standards, regulations, and operations. I think that, the biggest problem was that people didn't always know what the regulations were, or we had processes that really weren't documented well. So as a result, a lot of your areas lagged in terms of their ability to provide excellent services for citizens. I think that Patrick certainly brought a wealth of knowledge from his prior experiences and positions with the state, and understanding the need for uniform standards and documented processes influences everything from council procedures like parliamentary procedure, upgrading the municipal code. Where I was today, they were talking about they don't know what the current regulation is because there's no version control, there's no one place to look, and so that makes it very difficult to be compliant. And then I think that in process, there's an opportunity and energy being spent trying to upgrade in some of the areas that are listed, zoning, code enforcement, et cetera. Patrick, do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah. Just to add that, Cinema and I have had a lot of talks. We're talking with the attorneys, trying to figure out if we can make the process more efficient, easier for y'all. The amendment process, when you're doing amendments to ordinances, is there a way to automate that to make it a little easier to see what the changes are? Of course, I come from an environment where it's laid out very, very specifically, and so hopefully we can try to work on those things in the coming year. Upgrading Municode, Civic Clerk, and just trying to make this an easier process for everybody. So hopefully I can use some of that experience to help y'all and just, again, make things more efficient.
We'd be grateful.
And then this slide just has some additional recommendations that were not part of those major recommendations. Established complaint tracking and management system, which is somewhat like what Councilman Robert was talking about, so that you'll be able to track progress on citizen complaints. We felt that the parishes that we saw that were very successful were doing a little bit more planning and looking ahead, and so they were commissioning studies to see what's the impact if we have an influx of residents, if we have more development on the west side, what is that going to impact? What are some potential stress points, and how do we get ahead of that? And honestly, you all work so well with your school system and other political jurisdictions. I think that this could be a collaborative effort and really help you get ready for the future. I think that there have been examples of things that have been smaller versions of this, but there are large municipalities. I know you visited Houston and Harris County, and they're all about looking ahead, and so they've done enormous planning for the future, and we would strongly encourage that. And you got to catch up with where you need to be now, but eventually you can do that.
Yeah, and I think you've probably heard the parish president say that we've had lots of old studies, but we need studies that don't sit on a shelf and that we use, and so that's what we're trying to do right now. You heard the Fence to Maker study, which we're trying to look at the quality of life and try to work on grants. The H&TB floodplain management, that's obviously going to be put into use right away. The Move Ascension, I know there's a big effort on that. We talk about that constantly, about whether it's on track. I know transportation does as well. The 5-year capital plan, thanks to Don Caballero and Tony Orso for helping that become a reality. That's the beginning stages. We're going to move that forward as well, trying to look towards the future. And then I know Ricky's even working on a recreation master plan. So we're trying to do future thinking that doesn't sit on a shelf, that we use, that y'all use, and we talk about constantly as we go along, because we don't want anything to sit on a shelf. We want to make things happen.
And some of what drove this was the fact that you have reserves in so many areas, and we wanted you to sort of protect your reserves for things that were important, but we wanted you to use the money that you had for important things. And so I think that, those are some examples of opportunities to do that. Develop a recognition and rewards program to improve morale. I do think that this is much more important than it would seem on the surface. We heard a lot about this in DPW. We heard more about it on the east side than the west side, but we heard about it on the west side too. There used to be opportunities. There were opportunities for council members and staff members to enjoy an afternoon together, have a cook-off, have a whatever kind of activity. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, and it doesn't have to be very formal. In fact, some of the more informal things are the best, whether it's, getting a toy drive at Christmas or, some service opportunity. You just really are ripe for that. And I do think that would make people feel very, very engaged and included. I think that when you, help people pay-wise, as you're going to be doing, as you've already, voted on, I think that you will be much more of an employer of choice. But to take people from being, okay, I'm here, yeah, this is not a bad place to work, I'm not looking to leave, to, man, we got a lot of camaraderie. I like the people that I'm working with. I really feel like we're valued by the council and administration, that's the place where you want to go. So hopefully we can get some things going on that. And then Patrick and I could stand at the mic and have a very, very spirited discussion about procurement and the differences in the way that we see that, but I do believe it's better. So Patrick, would you like to talk about that?
Yes, so the last several months since I've started, I've sat down with Cynthia LeBlanc and Devin Russ and said, look, we need to update the procurement manual. We need to make things specific. It needs to have flow charts. We need to make it to where somebody who comes as a brand new employee knows exactly what to do. And so we've started on that. We actually started with trying to make the process more efficient, kind of a one-pager. So that's the first step. And so, they're excited to try to get this done. It'll help them. It'll help the departments. We want it to be where when a person calls to ask a question, we can say, well, look on page 32. That's where, make it to where it is a definitive process. And every question that we're getting today has already been contemplated as in a policy. So we are working on that now.
It's much better. How about that? Kudos. So that was great, right? So some big improvements and things in the work, certainly work left to be done. But I think, there are a lot of the ingredients that are being put in place. So I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I probably did most of those during the course of the night. We thank you, Christelle. Are there any questions? Mr. Lambert.
Yes, thank you. And it's been around since 2004. This is one of my wish lists that I've been hoping for. I recently heard, I think we had a retiree at 40 years who stayed at this parish for 40 years.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
Now, when we get new recruits in, we want them to go the distance. We're going to have the pay. We're going to have everything that you could possibly, you need in a job. So from 2004 to 2021, I want to let y'all know that this is big, and I'm just glad to be a part of it and to see the employees have the morale that we're going to need to move this parish forward. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. You made this happen. So it's great.
It was not an easy task.
No, it
Christelle.
wasn't.
Thank you. We want to thank you, all of us who were here in 2016 and began this endeavor. We were stunned by the flood, but we didn't let it die.
Right.
We continued to work on it. We've made significant progress. I believe that this current council, and I know that this administration, has bought into what we are trying to do here. I was the chairman of finance when we first met to have the first discussion about this in 2016.
I think it was.
And to see it today, many of the things that we said needed to be accomplished, I think the vast majority are either in play or have been accomplished.
Right.
So I take some, unlike Dempsey, I take some real personal satisfaction in that. And I thank you very much and your team. And I do appreciate this administration that did not just throw it all on the side and say, oh, well, we're not going to fool with that.
Right.
Because that easily could have happened.
Right.
And so I'm encouraging those of you here to understand that what we do, we must do for the long term. And we must make it so, if it's as important to us as this is, then we need to make it such that it cannot be thrown by the wayside.
Right.
Because change happens, and we don't know who will be in leadership in the future. And we need to tighten that rein that says, these are the way we're going to manage problems. This is the way we're going to do our work. And it's tight enough that from one administration to the next, they know how to make progress.
Right.
And from one council to the next, they know how to maintain that progress. So I thank you all for listening to Christelle tonight. It was my wish that she be here. I apologize for the lateness of the hour, Christelle, to you and to my fellow councilmen. But this is the most important thing I feel like we did in 2016, short of recovering from a devastating flood. And to see it in 2021 still being worked toward and implemented and embraced is like you, Dempsey, I think this is the best thing we've accomplished. So I thank you all. Joel, you had a comment.
Just to kind of reiterate what Dempsey and Terry are saying, I'd like to have all of these ideas and all of these paths forward for these different positions available to everyone, even to the extent of maybe dealing with the school boards. If we can get some guidance counselors, some people like that involved, because we're talking about some good careers, some good paying jobs with good benefits. And if we can get these kids at a younger age, especially with your different woodworks and your welding and your different trade schools, not saying that we'd have to apply to that, it could be attorneys or anything else also, but just to maybe head start that and have that relationship. And I think we've come a long ways since, as Dempsey was saying, 2004 to now, and to compete with the rest of this country in the private sector, you have to.
Right.
And to be what we want to be, we have to compete.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, gentlemen? Christelle, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We look
Happy
forward to
holidays.
another report
Bye.
on these things, and we will move along now to item 10, the executive session. Have a motion by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Cagnolati to enter into executive session. Madam Secretary, please open the voting. Somebody vote for Chase. You didn't hear that. We need to get, somebody grab Chase, please, because he does need to vote.
Madam Chair, we can count Chase absent, Terry, from that vote.
Okay, let's just count him absent from that one.
Motion to reconvene?
Have a motion by Councilman Malasaw and a second by Councilman Cagnolati to reconvene.
I'll make a motion that we.
Mr. Wagasback.
I'm sorry, you're doing it? Go ahead. I didn't realize you were doing it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve private counsel to settle the matter of Freddie Johnson versus the Parish of Ascension as advised.
Have a motion and a second to settle as advised. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Motion, I have a motion by Councilman Mason, a second by Councilman Cagnolati to enter into executive session on item B, Alvin Ellis versus Scott Leday, Leday's Auto LLC. Everybody please vote. Have a motion by Councilman Cagnolati, a second by Councilman Mason to reconvene. Councilman Lawler.
Yes, I move that we approve the parish attorney to preserve the parish workers' compensation lien in the matter of Alvin Ellis versus Scott Leday.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item 10, Boone Services, LLC versus 10C, Ascension Parish Government Bridging the Gap. And when we come back, gentlemen, I know you're going to want to quickly adjourn, but there is one more item of housekeeping that we need to do, so do not quickly adjourn. Let's, I have a motion and a second to enter into executive session. Vote. Has everybody voted? Okay, good enough. Have a motion by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Cagnolotti to reconvene. At this time, I would like to ask Patrick to read, I think he has a message from the parish president. This is our last meeting before the end of the year, and certainly our last meeting before Christmas, which is a special time for all of us who celebrate Christmas here in Ascension Parish. So, Patrick?
I do have a message. He wishes he could have been here, but since he can't, on behalf of the parish president, Clint Quintmall, and the Ascension Parish government, I'd like to wish the council, all of the staff, and the residents of our parish happy holidays.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. We extend the same greeting to our parish president. On behalf of the council, I certainly wish all of you out there who have stayed up to this ungodly hour to watch this meeting a very happy holiday season, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and safe travels during the season. Thank you. Have a motion by Mr. Cagnolotti and a second by Mr. Mason to adjourn. Thank you. Gentlemen, it has been my pleasure to sit in the middle of you.